Now, in today's talk, we'll discuss about how to carry out the optimized routing in a wireless network using a machine learning techniques. Now, in our lab, we have introduced a network called SHIP network. Now, what does SHIP actually stand for? Smart network. The word alphabet S stands for smart network or a sparse network. Now, what we are looking forward to in the next 10 years. Beyond that, it's very difficult to visualize in IT industry and academia and research that what will happen after 10 years, nobody knows. Even the pandemic and COVID had shown that we can't even make a prediction for the next year also, leave alone the decade. But then planning, we always, as academician, as a researcher, we are good in planning and we keep on planning the things. So here the SHIP network stands for smart and sparse. Smart means the network, just like our smartphones, they are the best examples. In today's smartphones, they have actually killed many other neighboring products. For example, nowadays cameras are gone off, so is a clocks, watches, a torch. Today's smartphone has killed all those things because they are that good. They are all Wi-Fi enabled and they are mobility driven. You can take them anywhere with the smart charging facilities. So these are what we call the smart networks. Then sparse network is something where we spread the nodes across a huge vast area. For example, I am trying to carry out a deployment of the IoT network in a desert region of Rajasthan, maybe like a Barmer district or the any Kota district or any other district of Rajasthan, and where my sample area is very big. So I need to carry out a deployment of these sensor nodes across a huge vast area, and they can't be very closely overlapping because the area is so vast. I need to cover that area. For example, I'm carrying out a research project for the prediction of atmospheric temperature, pressure and humidity or the soil condition in the Jaisalmer or the Barmer district of Rajasthan in the month of June. So I need to carry out deployment of the sensor nodes, and definitely the graph I'm going to get is going to be very sparse as such. Then H is for the hybrid, because till now what we have seen in those of you who might be working in the area of networks, both wired and the wireless network, what we call IEEE 802.3 and 802.11 to 15. Slowly and steadily, many networks have evolved over a period of time in the wireless network. And it has been primarily the work of Kevin Fall, who came up with the delay tolerant networks, or Charles Perkins, who came up with the mobile ad hoc networks. So these people have spent their life almost in introducing this kind of a network. And every network differs from other network in some of the few parameters. So today we have got MANET's mobile ad hoc networks. We have got by Charles Perkins. We have got DTN delay tolerant network by Kevin Fall. Then we have got the Bluetooth network, which almost there for the last 10 years. Then WSN wireless sensor networks. Again, for the last 15 years, they have been there. Body area network. Then IoT, which has been introduced by Kevin Ashton. So overall, if you see, so many multiple type of the wireless network have evolved over a period of time. And almost all of them are different from each other in something or the other parameters. So no two wireless network are same. They are different. For example, in mobile ad hoc network, we say nodes are in the overlapping transmission range of each other. But in delay tolerant network, we say nodes are spread across vast area. Bluetooth, we say nodes are almost in the, we say master slaves origin. They are in the line of sight transmission of each other. One hop, you can need to transmit the data. So every network has some few characteristic features, and that is what that makes them distinguishable from the other networks. Then I stand for internet. What we say smart networks are all live networks, internet enabled, because today's patience level in the younger generation is very thin. Moment they type the name of the domain in the address bar of the web browser and they click enter, they want to see the website. So they want a fast access, fast connectivity. But then if you are carrying out a research project, let's say for a different terrains, like I want to carry out a deployment of a IoT network in a mountainous region. Those of you might have visited the Uttarakhand region or the Himachal Pradesh. We know that terrain is very volatile because of deforestation, because of the carried out by human beings, by the landslides, by the frequent flash floods, by the earthquakes. So carrying out the deployment of sensor nodes in these domains and then having a live connectivity is very difficult to achieve. So most of the time we've got intermittent connectivity. At times the connectivity is there for a few seconds or few minutes and then it vanishes off because we don't have a flat terrain, just like we don't have a situation like in Delhi or NCR where we have got a flat terrain, they are almost landlocked. In mountainous terrain, providing a connectivity to the nodes in the wireless network is very difficult to achieve. Then P is for the planned network. Planned network wherein you know and you can carry out deployment of the nodes before yourself. For example, I want to carry out, I'm having a conference for 3 days or a symposium for 2 days. So in my conference hall auditorium, I would like to establish a network of, let's say, few nodes, maybe 10 or 15 or 20 nodes. So the entire topology is known to me. I can carry out the fixed deployment of the nodes. But in the case of the real-time deployment, for example, when we talk of the research in the area of wireless network, we have got a lab condition to land condition. In the lab conditions, maybe in your college or a university or a corporate, everything is before you. So you can carry out deployment, you can carry out the management of the nodes, you can see the wear and tear of the nodes and carry out the replacement of the node. You can take care of the battery condition or the energy level of the nodes. But in the case of partition network, it's very difficult. The network is broken down into small clusters or small partitions. And every partition or cluster will have a collection of nodes. Maybe let's say one cluster has got 3 nodes and the cluster got 15 nodes. So they are spread across a huge vast area. And that's why we say intermittent connectivity exists usually in the partition network and the internet connectivity exists in the planned network. So SHIP network is what we are projecting in the next 10 years as a collection or amalgamation of various kind of the wireless network which have evolved over a period of time and then trying to bring them on a single platter so that the problems, the challenges can be easily looked into it. Otherwise, you start research work in one network and you totally get consumed up in those kind of network. So what are the issues we are looking forward to? And if let's say this BTech or MTech final year student is looking for some topic in this kind of network. So one of the major topic is routing. How do we carry out the exchange of messages between the nodes of a wireless network? And not only exchange of message, but a secure exchange of messages. That means we're also talking of security. When you carry out exchange of messages, we are only talking routing protocols. For example, if you take a MANET and a mobile ad hoc network, we have got 2 sets of routing protocols. One is a proactive category and one is a reactive category. Proactive means we're talking of planned network, where you know the entire network topology in advance and you can think of a routing protocol which can help you to achieve the simple transfer of messages in a planned network. So we follow proactive routing protocol category, just like what we have got DSDV, destination sequenced distance vector routing protocol in MANET. But then every time you cannot do a planning. Sometimes you need to carry out deployment of a network in a real-time scenario on the land conditions and where mobility is driven and the nodes can move around. Because if I am a person and I am using my smartphone and if I'm moving around, my phone is also moving around with me. So mobility is because I'm a social carrier. I am carrying this node with me. So this node is dependent upon me. If I'm sitting for the entire day in my house, the node is static in nature. It is not moving around. The lat-long coordinates, the latitude and the longitude coordinates are same. But yes, if I'm a salesman, I'm continuously moving around, or if I'm a Zomato guy, doing a delivery, or a courier guy, or a Flipkart person. So my phone is continuously moving with me. That's why, and these kind of the nodes which are mobility driven are very useful because this is what we want, because they can act as a good carrier for the exchange of the messages. So we use the protocol which I think many of you had already seen and aware of. We use the AODV, ad hoc on demand distance vector routing protocol, one of the most widely used protocols for carrying out the exchange of messages in the area of the MANET. But this work only in the case of MANET. But if you go for the other network like DTN or the Bluetooth or the wireless sensor network, they won't work. Because in DTN, we have got a network where the network is broken down into clusters or partitions. and the nodes are far apart from each other as introduced by Kevin Fall. And I can't use the routing protocol of MANET in the delay tolerant network. And this is where DTN introduced their own set of routing protocols. Like we got epidemic routing protocol by Wahadat and Becker. We have got spray and wait routing protocol. Even we have introduced certain protocol like the CAR protocol is there. We have profit protocol is there. So multiple kind of the protocols are there which can easily be used for the transmission of the messages from one node to another node depending on the type of the network. So what are the broad areas where we can actually look forward to? So these are the broad areas of the application areas of the SHIP network. Just a moment. So these are some of the broad areas where we look for the application of the SHIP network. Now here when we're talking of the broad areas, we're not talking of the lab conditions. So those of you who are planning to take up this as a research area in your PhD or even after your, don't do it in the lab condition. You won't be able to get a good results. As simple as that. And if you think of writing a research paper to be submitted in your some SCI or the ESCI index journal, they require the real-time stuff. As simple as that. So if you can afford and if you got funding from the MIT or the DST or the ministry or maybe from some own university or colleges, then go for it, because research cannot be done free of cost. Research require investment in terms of procuring the software and the hardware, and where do you carry out? So I can carry out a deployment of a network in an area which has suffered a natural disaster. For example, in nowadays you got forest fires in jungles, in forest areas. We have got a mountainous where flash floods and earthquake and landslides happen. So these are the areas which are looking for the deployment of a network in quick succession, in quick span of time. Like we have got the Rapid Action Force team are there, disaster DDMA, disaster management authorities are there, because they want to provide a relief and rescue operation to the people who got affected in these areas. So we can carry out a quick deployment of the network, having nodes, and carry out a seamless communication in the wireless area. We can carry out deployment in the desert area, like we took an example of Rajasthan region or any of the desert area where the huge land is there and you need to carry out some. Now the objective of my research should be very clear. मैं क्या करना चाहता हूँ? So there's a very good statement we say. Finding a good problem statement is itself a problem actually, and this is where you must work collaboratively with your supervisor, because once he has been through the stages of the PhD, he knows how to sharpen the research areas and how to come up with a good, constructive, crisp and precise problem statement. That is very important as such. Same way I can carry out deployment of the SHIP network in the forest areas. For example, I would like to keep a track of the depleting species, animal species. So there is a very good experiment called ZebraNet carried out in Kenya. If you're free at any point of time, you can Google them. So what they did was they tagged each and every zebra, and zebra were allowed to move around in the entire forest range of the Kenya. And moment any of the zebra reached close to the control center or the room center, they recorded its presence. Yes, this was a zebra who was tagged with the, let's say, number Z001. He was spotted on this date at this time and found in a fit and a healthy condition. So in this way, they were able to keep a track of the zebras which were able to move around, and population of the zebra was continuously thinning down because poachers were there, or maybe zebras were having certain own health condition issues. So by supervising them, by monitoring their movement, by the forest official were able to get the good results. So this was one of the good successful experiment wherein the tagging, the nodes were mounted, and these nodes were able to capture where all the zebras were moving and how long they were staying at this place when they were going to the sea or river for taking the water. So continuously the movement was tracked, and very good successful experiment done by some US university in Kenya. Then I can carry out the deployment of the SHIP network on the ocean seabeds. For example, I would like to carry out a study of the aquatic flora and fauna. because nowadays we have seen in the times of pandemic, though as a human beings, we have been struggling for our survival and in our fight against the virus, but somewhere we are damaging environment a lot. Like we're using a nth number of sanitizer bottles, we're using a mask almost on daily basis, disposable mask, so many number of syringes, because we have seen in the second wave hospitals were all booked up. So much amount of the medical waste has got disposed in syringes, injections, medicines, tablets, syrups, and everything was being dumped in the drains. Drains ultimately go to the seas and rivers and then finally to the oceans. So just imagine the entire, even we are 130 crore plus in India, the entire population of the world is continuously using the mask, the sanitizer bottles and the medical waste, and everything is ultimately getting dumped on the ocean seabed. So somewhere we are damaging environment to a lot of extent, though it is our struggle also for our own survival. That's true. But then we cannot run away from the responsibility that yes, we have damaged the environment a lot. And so many animal species would have died down, even knowingly or unknowingly. We have got so much damage, both in terms of the soil pollution, the water pollution, and what it means. It's very difficult to predict the kind of damage which you have done. Maybe in the times to come, in the years to come, because nature always pay you back. Whatever you give to the nature, nature will always reflect, and we have seen it in the past so many years. So somewhere study will now be carried out that how much damage has been done in the time of pandemic to the nature, and then we'll see some good result by John Hopkins University or MIT, and they will come out with some startling results. Maybe Anthony Fauci will again say that this is what impact has been done due to the COVID or the pandemic in the entire world. Another experiment, what we carried out virtually, was the deployment of the ship network on the border areas. For example, India and Nepal, we share the border and the Pokhran region. Now here we can use the drones, and when I'm talking of this area, I'm only talking of the when the things go bad. It means when some natural disaster has happened, natural calamity has happened, like the landslide has taken place, and the people have got affected by it. Now, what we can do as a researcher or academicians to provide the help to these needy people. So, and that is what I always admire as a person, that do the research for the benefit of society. Don't just do the research for the sake of publications. And those of you who have already done PhD, you would always be remembering the last day of your presentation. When you make a defense for your thesis, the examiner always says, your work, how is it going to benefit the society? And let me tell you, I've also attended many number of PhD vivas. Most of the time candidates don't know the answer, because during the entire 4 or 5 years, they've been so much pressurized and they are so much stressed that leave alone the society, they can't even devote the time to their families. So they can't think of this answer, that how their work is going to benefit the society or people at large. But yes, once you are through with it, once your degree has been awarded, and yes, now you can do research with your students, then always think of some innovative ideas and noble causes where yes, your work can benefit somebody. It should not be the work only for a piece of paper where no, it's not going to help anybody for that matter. So have that knack in mind. Slowly and steadily, gradually that thing will come and you will try to. So we can take the example of drones. Nowadays we have got the IoTs in drones, because for Internet of Everything, IoE is there as such. Internet of Flying drones is there. Even we got FANETs, flying ad hoc networks, where the drones are widely used to help the people in the distress. And these, if you look at this here, we have got 3 nodes A, B, and C. And this is an area which has earthquake has happened, and these are the multiple number of wireless network nodes spread across the areas. Now the drones, with the help of drones, we can try to reach out to the people who are having these nodes, because we know every node has the IP address, the MAC address, so it can be tracked. Wherever you are located, the node will have a fixed lat and long coordinates, and yes, with the help of the drones, the remote data center, people can try to reach out to these people in distress and try to help and provide them the help, whatever help can be provided, because if they're stuck in the building collapse, they need to be picked out, they need to be evacuated very fast, otherwise they just might die down in that natural disaster. Let's take an example, what we carried out a simulation, what we carried out the work. We've got to take a sample case study. We have got a short range wireless network. So Now the message has to be exchanged between the nodes. So it's just carried forward from the same stuff, but on the lab scenarios, on the simulators. So here node A has a message for the node D, which can be delivered using the path A to B to C to D and without any substantial delay. So means we're talking of the manets of the ship network, right? Now what will the node A do? There are two ways. Use the routing protocol for it. That's the best way. Either we use the manet. Manet we have got to offer the DSDV. We have got DSR, Dynamic Source Routing Protocol. We have got AODV, Ad Hoc On-Demand Distance Vector Routing Protocol. We can use these protocols and help the node A to generate a message called route request message, what we call RREQ message. And this message will forward it from the node A to B, then B to C, and then C to D. In this way, the node A has been able to reach out to the node number D. And same way, once the node D will receive a message, node D will try to acknowledge it back. That is, this is me, and I have been tracked by the source node A. So D reply by sending a route reply message, what we call RREP. So route replies goes from D to C, then back forth from C to B, and then again back from B to A. So in this way, the path has been discovered, path has been tracked from the source node A to the source node D, and with the help of the intermediate nodes B and C. And that is, we say, a routing path has been discovered. Now, this path is heavily dependent upon the intermediate node B and the C. If they move around, the path will get broken down. So what we call link failure. That is what we say. So we want that during the process of message transmission from the A to the D, we require a cooperation or a help of the node B and C. So I was discussing about some of the prominent research issues in the ship network. One is definitely the routing. The path has to be discovered. Then we say it's a secure routing or not.
Hello.
Means we don't want the node B and C. So we don't want node B and C to act as a malicious node. Because if they act as a malicious node, then the message is going to be forwarded from the node A to the node D may be corrupted by the node B and C. And node B and C might launch certain attacks, like we got a black hole attack, wormhole attack, Sybil attack, collaborative attack, brute force attack. So security is one of the very important track in the area of the wireless network. One is definitely the routing. Another is a secured routing. So first of all, routing has to be done. Only then we can move towards the security. So when we do a routing, we believe that the node B and C are trustable nodes, and we can maybe a friend node, and we can trust them, believing that they are not going to drop the packets, neither they are going to remove the packet from the network. They will keep on forwarding the packet. So we believe a spirit of cooperation, camaraderie while carrying out a routing in the area of the wireless network. Otherwise, if you would like to go for security, security is a full-blown track in itself. You only work only on the security aspect. Either you try to launch the attack in a wireless network, or you try to prevent the occurrence of an attack in a wireless network, because you can only play two roles. Other is the quality of service, QoS parameters, what we say. How much acceptable routing for you it is. So every cellular service provider, every network service provider defines certain quality of service. Means in terms of jitter, in terms of latency, in terms of delay, how much delay is acceptable to you. So these are some of the prominent track in the area of wireless network. Other are energy level issues. How to devise the next generation of the algorithms and the techniques which can help you to save the battery life, because that's another prominent area on which many of the academician researchers work around the world. How to save the energy of the node, because energy of the node is very, very critical, very, very important. Even when we are using our smartphones, you all know we keep on charging. Every now and then we believe in charging, and we try to charge our phones as and when where we get the socket, we plug in, and we believe in the quick and frequent charging of our smartphones. So one option in this case study is tracking a path and taking the help of the intermediate nodes to deliver a message from the source to the destination. Now, what could be the alternate way? Alternate or the second way is the mobility. Either A moves closer to the D or D moves closer to the A. Means the source moves closer to the destination or destination moves closer to the source. So here this is how it is going to happen. The two nodes come closer to each other and they are in the overlapping transmission range of each other, and now they can exchange the message. That's one of the another approach, how we can carry out the delivery of the message or the routing of the message in a wireless network. Now let's take another example. Again, here in this scenario, we have got 4 clusters of 4 partitions. The first partition is having 2 nodes. Now, when we show the dashed lines, which means is a wireless. Firm line indicates a wired network. Dashed line indicates a wireless. And this is all the transmission range of that particular node. So here B or C are in the overlapping transmission range. Here D and E are in the overlapping transmission range. A is a standalone node, and so is the last node. So multi F node is again node only one partition or cluster. So we have got 4 clusters. 2 clusters are having 2 nodes, a pair of node in the overlapping transmission range, and 1 node is a standalone node in F node. Now in this scenario, the routing scheme of MANET cannot be used. That's for sure, because they believe all the nodes always to be in the overlapping transmission range of each other. Now this is where the problem comes, that how do you select the best hop node, which is the most suitable node which you can use for carrying out the transmission or forwarding of the message. So there are certain parameter or characteristic feature of the node, what we normally say, how to select the best hop node. One of the parameters is what is the RAM space, the random access memory for the buffer. Now why we are doing it, because here B has a message and it wants to forward to the node D, and it will search its vicinity. Is there any node? And if the node is found or detected, rather more than one node is found or detected, how to choose the best hop node? That is one of the critical question which we need to answer. If there are here in this, I have got only one node, but I could have the node here, so many nodes. So how do you select the best hop node for forwarding the message? So the message can be routed to the next neighboring node and then to the next neighboring node and finally reaching to the destination. So we say the node has to make a selection on the basis of certain parameters, like the RAM space of the intermediate node, what is the internal storage memory of the intermediate node, of the total memory, how much is the free buffer space available with the node, what is the CPU which you are using, what are the number of CPU cycles, the fetch, decode, execute and write back cycle, what is the processor which is being used in the node, what is the type of network to which the node is belonging to, maybe DTN type, MANET type, a wireless sensor network type, body area network type, IoT type. So what is the kind of a network to which the node is belonging to? Then what is the battery level of the node in terms of mAh, milliampere hour? And nowadays we have seen that with the help of using a smartphone, the Apple series, the phone is getting much more larger, much more cumbersome, because they're using a battery which has 5000 mAh or 6000 mAh. So weight of the battery is getting increased as the life of the battery is getting increased. So we have got multiple parameters on the basis of which the node has to make a selection that which should be the best next hop node on which, sorry for the wrong spelling of mobility, and what is the mobility pattern of the node. So for example, if I'm carrying out a experiment in my city using a, let's say experiment where I'm using a smartphone as my DTN node. So I would like to have the people who are very active in their mobility rather than the people who are just slowed down, who are not moving around, because they are not a good transmitter of the messages. I require people which are highly mobile, because using the nodes, I can carry out a quick transmission of the message from one end of the city, from one zone of the city to another zone of the city, from one domain to another domain within the same city. So mobility pattern needs to be very high, and that is when we talk social networks. So that is what we say, a social carrier has to be very mobile. He does not have to be stale and just lazy going guy. He has to be quick, because we want to have access to smartphone, and using his phone we can carry out the transmission of the messages from one end to another end in the city or in the rural area, wherever you're carrying out your research experiment. So what is the problem statement what we're looking forward to? The selection of the intermediate node for successful and the on-time delivery of the message is very important. And this selection of the best node is a challenge in itself. That how do you select a node which is the most appropriate one, which can help you to transfer a message quickly. And this is where ORUML is just a short form for optimized routing in a wireless network using machine learning technique, comes up with the approach to choose the best node and to deliver the message from the source to the destination. So we have just made an effort in this direction. We don't say our effort has been that good, that should be followed, but yes, effort has been made wherein we'll try to use the machine learning techniques to help the source node to choose the best next hop node so that the journey of the message doesn't get stopped and the message is able to reach easily, smoothly, and in time from the source to destination. Because timing is very important. As we know that in whenever we generate any message, every message comes with a TTL, what we call time to live. How long the message will survive on the network. Again, it just for example, if you take the routing RIP, routing information protocol, it says that within 16 hop counts, the message should be delivered from the source to the destination. So we keep the TTL value as 60. And moment the message cross from one node to another node to another node, every node keep on decrementing the value of the TTL. So after 16 hops, either the message will reach to the destination or message will be removed from the network. Because we cannot have the message, otherwise the entire network will be clogged up. It will be filled up with so many number of messages which have got timed out, which does not make sense, which have lost their sanctity, and there's all stale. There is no point in delivery of the message if they have not reached now. There's no point in delivering at the later stage also. And the concept is similar to what we have got for our human. If you look at the TTL example, when God created us, to every one of us, he imposed a TTL. That I'm going to survive, let's say 50 years, you go survive for 55 years, third person survive for 60 years, fourth survive for 75 years. So with every passing year, though we are celebrating our birthdays, but actually what is happening, our TTL is getting incremented. And moment we reach to the counter, we hit the counter, we get uploaded. That's how it actually happens. So the TTL concept has been taken by the humans very nicely within the area of the wireless network also. In wired network, we are not worried so much about the TTL of the message, but in wireless network, we are conscious because every node, when it forwards a message to the next hop node, during this process of receiving, analyzing, forwarding, certain fraction of the node's battery is draining off. So we cannot allow the messages to drain off the node's battery just like that. So if the message is useless now, it has lost its sanctity, then there is no point. It should be just removed off from the, just be garbage collected from the network. So that's where the TTL play a very important role in the delivery of the message. So what the ORUML or the optimized routing using machine learning algorithm has all been about. Aim or the objective has been successful delivery of the message from source node to destination node, which we know is a challenge, was a challenge, is a challenge, would always remain a challenge. You cannot have a fixed defined algorithm which can give you the best routing path. That's for sure. It virtually can't be. So it's just an ongoing process. People keep on working on it. They keep on coming up with the best optimal solution. And then again, we have got another best optimal solution. So ORUML or the optimized routing wireless network using machine learning uses the ML algorithm like KNN, which is we all know K nearest neighbor. We use the SVM support vector machines and MLR multinomial logistic regression technique to predict the network type of the source node and the destination node. So I will discuss about the network type. What are the different? We have already discussed one of them, like a classification of the network into the type like DTN, the MANETs, the wireless sensor network, the body area networks. So different type of the networks to which, and the node will belong to one of these kind of the network. So I'll take a diagram to make it much more clear. Now the ML model is trained by using characteristic feature of the node collected in a real-time scenario. Now, such as the battery BPU, battery power utilization. What is the battery power utilization of the node? For example, if you purchase a very new smartphone, it will battery power utilization. Initially, phones have a very good battery. The draining off is very, very marginal, very, very limited. Slowly, when you are continuously using it for a period of 12 months or 18 months or 24 months or 36 months or more than 3 years, you will see the almost battery will either get they require replacement. So that's how the hardware manufacturers have designed the battery, that the batteries come with a limited shelf life, maybe 2 years or 36 months or maybe 48 months. That not beyond that they actually work. And the cells are then it all depends upon the quality and the configuration of the battery also. Then what is the available internal storage within the nodes, the IP address and the range of a node, because range play a very important role. For example, in a Bluetooth network, the range is hardly 10 meters. In a MANET, the range of the between the nodes in a wireless network is 100 meters. But in the case of the delay tolerant network or the DTN, the range is almost from 1 kilometer to 10 kilometers. So range is very, very vast, and it depends upon the kind of the network in which you are trying to find the optimized routing path. So underlying network play a very important role in your delivery of the message. And the proposed ORUML algorithm determines whether the source and destination nodes are co-located. Because if the nodes are co-located, that means they share their coordinates. They are in the overlapping transmission range or in the line of sight transmission. They can see, and if the nodes are co-located, they share their lat and long coordinates to a larger extent. Then they become a best node for message forwarding, and also determine the best neighboring hop for the efficient routing. So we always trust the co-located nodes, the nodes which are a part of the same network, the homogeneous network, or maybe their nodes are spread across a large area, maybe across clusters. They might fall into different partitions, and they might totally be in a different heterogeneous kind of a network. So positioning of the node is very, very important. So either it's a part of homogeneous network or a heterogeneous network category as such. What has been the roadmap? The work we did? First of all, data set collection. You need to have a data, no doubt about that. And most of the people, the students, the teachers who do the research in the area of the machine learning, the Kaggle is more like a Bible. So many data sets are there, plenty rather. Kaggle is just one of them. So many data repositories are there. Another good repositories is by the Government of India called data.gov.in. So if you are plan to carry out some research experiment on the Indian data sets, rather than using a Kaggle data set, you can go to the data.gov.in. So there they have provided data set for the many number of the areas, like the total number of electrified villages in India, total amount of the railway track which has been electrified, the number of the villages in India or the cities where 2G connectivity is there, where 3G connectivity is there, where 4G connectivity is there, number of villages where we got drains, where number of villages was tier 2 or tier 3 where water supply facilities there. So many number of data sets are there. I think before we go for Kaggle, we must work on Indian data sets first, because once you carry out work on Indian data sets, and if you write a research paper and get it published, so not only our data set will get acknowledged, but our work will get good reputation, and our data set will also get acknowledged. Another data set which I quietly use is a Crawdad, Community Resource for Archiving Wireless Data at Dartmouth College. It's a very good repository, open source repository, and they provide many number of the data sets for the Bluetooth network, for the wireless sensor network, for the body area network, for the delay tolerant network, for the mobile ad hoc networks. You can download them, and they're all good with a good accuracy, I must say. So here in our work, we did not download the data set from anywhere. What we did, we created our own data set. So we designed a Google form, and we shared it with our friends and colleagues to know the configuration of their phones, that what is their RAM, because the objective of this algorithm is to select the best hop node so that it can be chosen for routing of the message from source to destination. So what is the best hop node? What are the parameters? I just discussed few parameters, like it should have a good RAMs, it should have a good buffer space, good processor with a good number of CPU cycles, good battery with a quite high mAh. So number of parameters are there. So we jot down those parameters, and we prompted the people to enter their information, and most of the people are aware what is their internal storage, what is their memory space, what is the processor their phone is using. Everything now is there in settings of the phone, and you can come to know what kind of processor you are using. Then we apply the classification technique. So we use the machine learning algorithm for it. We use the KNN, we use SVM, support vector machines. We use the many number of the classification techniques are there, both in the supervised and the non-supervised learning algorithms. So depending on your choice, you can choose any one of them, depending on your problem statement, depending on your search area, whichever suits best, go for it. That's something like this. Then which are the two nodes co-located? That means, are they a part of the same network? If yes, then yes. When I'm choosing a best hop node, it will help me, because we always in a wireless network we work in a spirit of friendship and camaraderie. Today, if I require the help of my neighboring node, tomorrow neighboring node will be requiring my help. So we work on a principle of give and take. Means give the help today. Help in terms of what? In terms of routing of the message. Don't deny the neighboring node that I'm not going to forward a message to you because I'm running out of battery space, or I've got a less number of the buffer space, or I'm just drained off completely. My battery levels are depleting. So that's a give and take. Today, if you refuse to help anybody, tomorrow the other person will definitely refuse you. So when we say two nodes are co-located, that means they work in a spirit of friendship and they will help each other in exchange of the messages. Then we also check, are the two nodes belong to a same network? Means are the two nodes a part of DTN? Two nodes are part of the MANETs, two nodes are part of the WSN, two nodes are part of the BAN, the body area network. If yes, then to which class the nodes belong to? So we'll have some class formulation. I will just share in the next slide how we have come with the 4 classes, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now these are not the classes which are there in the IPv4 class A, B, C, D, E. So we are not talking about those classes. These are the classes which we have just created in our own work. And the node is then finally selected to transfer the data to the destination node. So these are just steps which we have taken during the process of transmission of the message from the source to the destination. Now this is a graphical abstract of the same thing. If you can look around here, if you start from these are the multiple people to whom we shared the Google form, and we asked them to enter the characteristic feature or the values or regarding their nodes in our Google form, that what is their internal storage, what is the RAM, what is the CPU cycle, what are the IP address of your phone, what is the MAC address, because in mobile phones we know we have got a IMEI and the IMSI number, International Mobile Equipment Identity Number, and the International Mobile Subscriber Identity Number. So the numbers we keep a track of, and then we applied the machine learning technique like the SVM, the KNN, and the MLR. To actually using this classification technique, we came to know that this node belongs to which kind of the network. Do we put them into a category of the Bluetooth network? Do we put into a category of the mobile ad hoc network? Do I put it into the category of the delay tolerant network? So that this classification was all done with the help of this technique, and we devised certain algorithms for it, which I will share subsequently. That how we came up with this branching, that this node belongs to what kind of particular networks. So either my destination node is something like this, and if you look around, this is my destination node in the case of delay tolerant network, and this is my, let's in my college or university campus. So this is my source node. This is what we call SN, and this is my destination node. This is this, and these are the parameters of this particular characteristic feature of the nodes, the intermediate node. Like node 2 currently has got battery level 100%, internal storage 1 GB of memory. Then node 1 is there, battery 10%, internal storage 1 GB, but battery level is very less, we can see here. Then we go to the node 3, battery level is almost 100%, internal storage memory is 40 GB. Now if you look at these 3 nodes, the source node has to make a selection, then which is going to be the best hop node to forward the message to the destination node. So here it looks at the node 1, 2, and 3, and we say this is the best hop node because it is giving a good characteristic feature. It is rich and in terms of battery levels is very high. The memory space is good because memory space plays a very important role. Because if you look at the node in the wireless network, it need to cater to 2 kind of messages. One, the message which it is internally generating, and the other message which is receiving from the neighboring nodes for forwarding to the next node. So the node has to, first of all, a certain amount of memory will be reserved by the operating system, that is for sure. The remaining amount of memory has to be shared. So again, algorithm has to be there, or the API has to be installed, that what should be the criteria. How much amount of the buffer space should I leave it for the internal consumption, and how much amount of buffer space I leave it to the help of the neighboring nodes who are going to use me in message forwarding. तो ये जो डिसीजन है बड़ा क्रूशियल है और इसके लिए कोई बेंचमार्क नहीं है, मतलब there is no defined benchmark, it all just depends. And so you can have an nth number of algorithms coming into the picture that what should be the best optimized way, but it all depends from case to case basis. So having seen so much amount of work, I can just say it depends upon the network where you're deploying, what are the underlying topology, and what is the criticality of the message. For example, if you are deploying a network in the area of a natural disaster, so priority of the message has to be very high, because we need to provide a relief and rescue operation to the needy person. We need to go for evacuation of them as fast as possible. So we need to reach out to them. So SOS messages have to be sent to them that wherever you are, just help us. Send the message, we'll track your lat and long coordinates and we'll try to reach out to you. So priority of message play a very important role. Even though node is depleting battery level, then also if the message priority is very high, it will forward the message. So selection of the next hop node play a very important role and depends upon your problem statement, that what is your target area where for whom you are deploying this particular network. So we use this simple classification, supervised classification techniques for the identification of the nodes so that you can put them into right category, maybe a DTN or the bands or the Bluetooths or the DTNs as far as possible. Now this is the data set we designed, rather not designed, again a wrong word to use. We took the help of the people, so we designed a Google form for it so that we can reach out to the people and ask them to fill the data. So these are just a sample snapshot of the Google form. Go to your phone setting and kindly fill this form correctly. For RAM, CPU, internal, say go to the setting and then about phone, and then for MAC and IP address, go to the setting about phone set. So they're helping the people so that they don't suffer that where they should look out for it, these things. So we asked them to enter the information about the RAM, the CPU, the IP addresses, the MAC addresses, what is the battery level of your phone at present in mAh, what is the internal storage available in the memory. Though initially for this work we carried out the designing using a Google form, but nowadays we are working where we are using a Google APIs which directly help us to get this information without letting the user involved into this process. Though initially we asked the what we call samplers, the people who are a part of this experiment, to share this data about their phone with us. But nowadays we are working on experiment. We are using an inbuilt Google APIs where without letting a person know, we are fetching this information from them. What is his IP address? Though it is a breach of privacy and security to a larger extent, but we are not injecting any malware or ransomware in his phone. That's very clear. We are working for academic purposes and not for commercial gains, and that's something which you have to tell in your research paper when you're working, that your data repository, how it has been created. If you submit a work in your Springer or Elsevier, everywhere they ask how has been the source of your repository of the data. So this is pure academic work. We are not going to exploit somebody's privacy and security, because we don't want to involve the user. Rather, we say API, application programming interface, or the DLS, dynamic link libraries. With the help of the operating system, we can directly fetch the information and use them. Again, for the benefit of the quick transmission of the message in the wireless network. No other objective. We don't want to go into the messages, and we don't, even if you download any app for that matter, what does the app says? They want to have access to your messages. They want to have access to your chats. Even these apps, so-called, which you're downloading from the Google Play Store or the Apple repository, they are trying to breach into your privacy because they want to have access to everything. And most of the time we say yes to it. So they are actually doing a breach of privacy. We are not. Our objective is very clear, simple, very clear. We would like to help in the transmission of the routing of the messages, or maybe in the selection of the best next hop node. That is what our aim is. So
sorry to interrupt you, sir. Can you just elaborate a little bit more about that, how you are going to access this kind of information, all the parameters that you have listed out in the Google form? So what is the way through which, I mean, what kind of APIs you are going to write, or what kind of app you are going to have, which is going to, I mean, retrieve this kind of information?
Maybe I won't be able to give the answer for it right now because we are still working on it. But maybe next time somewhere we meet again, I will share this another work. This is one of the work which I've already done. That is what we are sharing right now. But maybe that is another work which we are it's more like incremental research. We keep on improvising, we keep on incrementing. So we are still working on it. The experiments we are doing it, but the results have not been that good. So we are still working on the APIs, finding because now if you work on the APIs again, you have a problem. Some certain phones are Android phones, and you have got different APIs for the Android phone. Then if you are working for us Apple phones, which have apps designed using a Flutter, they have got different set of APIs. Again, so Apple phones are difficult to breach because they have got very strong security and privacy measures. So they don't let the APIs to breach into them and get all this information for them. But for yes, Android, we are still working on the program. We are writing the code, we are deploying them, we are testing them. So there's no open source API we got. If you are asking the answer clearly that what is the name of the API, no, we didn't got that any API. We tried to explore that much. We tried our best to search on the web. Even you can try if you are able to find that's very good. Then me and my students, we started working on writing our own code that how we can breach into the Android phones and try to have this information so that these phones can be a good carrier of the messages or good. They could be the ones which can help in the transmission of message from source to the destination. So clear cut answer, we didn't find any APIs, no predefined APIs we were able to download from the Google, though we tried search and we are still working on it. But then we are still currently writing the code and hopefully the code will work after 2 or 3 trials. We would be successful in fetching this information from the Android based phone, but the Apple phone, that's very clear. It's very, very difficult because they have got a very strong security framework. And to breach them, it's not possible. Unless and until you have got certain Apple-oriented research only, because Apple does provide certain research in some of the universities, not in India, but they have tied up with the University of South California, USC. Even they have got the research lab in MIT. But in India, we have got Samsung, Ericsson, and Philips. They are working closely with universities, and they do provide their data set. They do provide their APIs. Because I have got few of my friends working with IIIT Delhi also, so they're able to get the access to it. But unfortunately, we are not able to get the access, and because these companies have got set up their research labs, so they're able to share their data set, their algorithms, their techniques with a select group of students who are working with PhD. Because nowadays we have got a sponsored PhD concept also, where a student registers for IIIT and he also has got a mentor in, let's say, Philips or in Ericsson or a Motorola or Samsung. And then he does a joint collaborative study both in the institute as well as in the company. So there, these kind of experiments can be very successful because there you got a company access directly. So you do your good PhD work along with the industry collaboration. Very good, innovative rather for that matter.
So in that case, basically we have some industry academics collaboration.
Yes, we require.
I think if we are able to collectively build this kind of API and we have some. If you are able to have some large data consisting all the parameters that you have listed out in the Google form, that would be a huge, or you can say significant research contribution for the.
Yes, it can be, but actually problem is that let's say if I'm able to, if you look at the GitHub, I explored the GitHub a lot and try to search out the people who have contributed a code a lot. But now these people give the code, but they refuse to share the algorithm to a larger extent. So we require a good collaborative research circle, where industry as well as academia works for a very holistic cause and for a period of research. It could be 1 year to 2 years, so that actually something good comes out. So abroad I've got my friends, you would also have got your friends in working there. Their industry and academia works collaboratively to a larger extent. But in India, we have not been able to develop that kind of culture where industry and academia works very cohesively. Here industry looks to academia something that we don't do anything. We are just we are totally obsolete. We don't do any good quality research work, and this is a feeling they have also give to the students. Most of the students, when they go to the industry, most of the time that's being taught to them, आपने तो कुछ पढ़ा ही नहीं होगा, हम आपको training देंगे. Yes. And now this spirit is very wrong. When a student goes to the industry, he says, okay, मैंने 4 साल में कुछ पढ़ा ही नहीं, इसका मतलब अब मैं सीखूंगा. So industry का जो version है students के लिए बहुत खराब. That's my experience. Rather, they should appreciate the faculty members and the professor working in university, that they are giving them the knowledge. Now the industry can refine that knowledge, can enhance that knowledge. Base we have already set. But now it is for the industry how they can capture that knowledge base and then improve it further and take it to the next level for that matter. So good collaboration is required between the industry and academia. And then if you, but I've seen many of the students who have gone to the triple IT and IIT, they're like, for example, in IIT Delhi, we have got this Bharti Airtel. They have got set up their research lab. So the students are able to get access to the real-time cellular network data sets. And that's good, because if you carry out an experiment on the real-time data set, nothing can match it, because your results are too good. And then you can analyze your results and showcase them.
Recently, while serving out many research papers in specifically in the field of fog and edge computing, where the machine learning algorithms have been applied, I was searching for the data, and you will not believe that 99% of the papers, they are just generating synthetic data. So how we can rely on that data, and how we can ensure that the data is that is
data
the main
is real time on the real time test beds.
Right, and in that direction, that is also a good, you can say, sign for all the participants. But I will advise, because most of the participants in this particular short-term course, they are doing PhD, or you can say they are guiding some PhD. So I will advise all these participants to conduct some research in which, if you are able to generate some good data, whether it may be in a wireless sensor network or whether it may be a fog network, if you are able to generate some kind of good data, real data, upon which you can do some kind of real analysis, or you can build some algorithms, that would be a good research, significant research you can perform on that. And that is the thing that should be done by each and every researcher, I think.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. And the other tip of advice: enjoy your research. Right. Enjoy doing your PhD. Don't think that the heavens will fall or आप बहुत stressed है, बहुत tension, कुछ ना करिए ऐसे. Just do the work and enjoy it. Results will automatically come in. Publications अपने आप हो जाएंगे. जब अच्छा काम करेंगे तो publications भी अच्छे आएंगे.
पर आपको ये लगना चाहिए कि हाँ आपने अच्छा काम किया है. That is the success.
अच्छा, वो feeling भी ना खुद ही आएगी.
Yes.
मतलब फर्स्ट ईयर ऑफ पीएचडी और फोर्थ ईयर में पीएचडी में आप खुद ही आप रियलाइज करेंगे कि यस आपकी ग्रोथ हुई है, आपका इवोल्यूशन हुआ है. और एंजॉय करिए, बिकॉज आपके नेक्स्ट 20 to 30 इयर्स जो एकेडमिक्स में है वो आपकी पीएचडी पे बहुत कुछ डिपेंड करेंगे. आपने किस तरह की रिसर्च करी है, बिकॉज वंस यू स्टार्ट सुपरवाइजिंग योर स्टूडेंट्स, एक बार आपकी पीएचडी हो गई और आपके स्टूडेंट्स आ गए, तो अगर आपने अपनी पीएचडी टाइम पे मेहनत करी और स्ट्रगल किया और हार्डवर्क किया और रिजल्ट्स हैं, तो आपके स्टूडेंट भी उससे बेनिफिट करेंगे. अदरवाइज अगर आपने कुछ अच्छा काम नहीं किया तो आप उन स्टूडेंट्स को कैसे इंस्पायर करेंगे? वो कहेंगे जब इन्होंने अपने टाइम पे कुछ नहीं किया, मुझे क्या कह रहे हैं करने के.
And also I have seen many PhD in foreign universities in which they have built some simulators like CloudSim.
Yes. Cloud. By Manjra Soft, Rajkumar Bhuiya, excellent work.
We have seen iFoxSim, and I have seen certain PhD that they are extending the functionality of a particular simulator. That is also a significant research.
Absolutely. Right. Those of you are working in the area of please.
Okay, sir, please continue.
अच्छा नहीं बोलिए.
नहीं, it's okay. That's.
I was just seconding your opinion कि those of you who are working in the area of cloud computing, Manjra Soft की साइट पे जाइए, राजकुमार भुइया सर का प्रोफाइल पढ़िए. It's amazing, inspiring रहा.
Yes.
मतलब आपको लगता है कि इंडियन भी क्लाउड कंप्यूटिंग के डोमेन में इतना अच्छा काम किया, इतना बेहतरीन काम करा है. जो क्लाउड सिम सिमुलेटर्स है, जो iFoxSim सिमुलेटर्स बहुत अच्छे बनाए हैं, and that too free of cost. But you just have knowledge of Java programming language, और उसके बाद आप कर सकते हैं उस पे काम डाउनलोड करके.
हाँ, that's basically use the basic Java programming language features. Yes. And based on the CloudSim, around 10 or 15 more simulators have been, you can say.
Absolutely, no doubt about that.
Okay.
Same if you're working in the area of IoT, because I'm talking of ship networks. If you're working in the area of IoT, there are certain good simulators. Like we have got a Cup Carbon simulator. So those of you who are doing your PhD in the area of IoT or plan to do PhD, or if you're already a faculty and if you're looking for some topic for your students, go for IoT. IoT today has got many number of simulators. Like Cup Carbon is one of them. It's a very good simulator. Then we got Contiki Kuja. Kuja is a Contiki on Java. That is what CONTIKI COOJ, Contiki Kuja simulator. Very good simulator because I'm working on it, so I can share my experience. And they work flawlessly. You can design your own network and carry out a simulation and get the results. Other is using a simulation using MQTT protocol, message queuing telemetry transport protocol. So these are all open source. You can just need to download the simulator and try doing it as such.
And you are able to enhance something in that simulator also. That is also very good. research.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
So this was a broad. Yeah.
Sorry to disturb you, but we have only 5 minutes, more minutes.
Okay, okay, okay.
Because at 4:30 we have to start the validation
Right,
session.
right, right.
Already had another department
Okay.
members also.
Got it, got it. So this was
If
a work.
possible,
I got it, I got it.
thank you, sir. Thank you.
I can understand for that.
Okay.
So this was a work we have already done it, so I can share that information. Yeah, quickly browsing through them. This was a network representation where we carry out using our manets, which we can see here, the manet 2, the delay tolerant networks. Then the best node selection, each and every node will make a point that whether it will forward a message or not forward a message. Not a good hop node. Here it will forward the message because it is a good hop node. So we kept on devising these parameters, and we did also come up with the class of the network node, wherein we worked primarily on 2 parameters: battery power utilization of the node and the internal storage of the node. Now these are the different classes we devised. So class 1, class 2, class 3 and class 4 node. The class 1, we say the battery power utilization is more than 80%, internal storage more than 60 GB. That was the first parameter we set. Then second parameter, then third parameter, then the fourth parameter. Then we came up with the class 2 parameters. Then we came up with the class 3 parameters, and then with the class 4 parameters. So depending on your research problem, depending on your problem statement, you can devise your own parameters. No need to just follow it blindly. You come up with your own concept, come up with your own idea, and then you can devise your own parameter for the formulation of the classes. Then we devise a set of certain algorithms which helps us in the identification of the node and to which particular class we can place it. So we've got the node co-location algorithm, network type identification algorithms, the trust factor algorithms, the algorithm of the priority of the message. And as I said, in the disaster areas, priority of the message play a very, very important role. Then the algorithm for the KNN classification technique, the algorithm for the MLR classification technique, and the algorithm for the SVM classification technique. So we devised the algorithm for them, which will help in the classification of the node and placing them in an appropriate type of the networks. Then we generated the results for the machine learning techniques, the SVM, MLR, and the KNN. And we have seen that MLR outperform the other techniques, namely SVM and the KNN, in terms of both the accuracy and the area under curve, what we call AUC. So the problem what we started off was that node has to make a selection, right? So how will the node make a selection? Depending, once it will run the ORUML algorithm, it will give you the best hop node to which the message should be forwarded. So let us say the node A stands out. It clears all those parameters of flying colors, and node B can now trust node A because node A possesses those properties, and from all other neighboring nodes like this, and this, node B has shortlisted node A on the basis of the RAM, on the basis of CPUs, on the basis of battery power utilization, on the basis of the internal storage, on the basis of the co-location of the nodes, on the basis of the homogeneity and the heterogeneity of the network. And now the node B can forward the message to the node A, assuming that the node A is a secure node. It is not a malicious node. It is not a compromised node. And then node A will forward the message on behalf of the node B to the node D. And that is what node A does. It forwards the message of the node B to the node D. That's how the message routing takes place from the source node to the destination node. So that is all from my side. If there is any doubt, I will be happy to answer the question. Please feel free to ask.
Okay, any doubts or any questions from the participants? If you have some doubt, then you can ask.
Or if you don't want to ask right now, you can drop me a message, rahul@ipu.ac.in, anytime without any problems. rahul@ipu.ac.in. That's what my.
I will share the email ID of yours sure. With all the participants.
Sure. Feel free to interact.
So thank you very much, sir, for delivering a very nice and very interactive session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for inviting me to deliver a talk. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
And thank you to all the participants for listening to that.